And we are back with another episode of the Hockey Princess podcast. I am your host, the Hockey Princess. Guys, this one's going to be a little shorter, a little bit quieter, because unfortunately, crusty old guy is not here this week. Crusty is out in Philly, so just slightly less speed bumps than usual, but he'll be back next week, guys. Don't worry. I know there was the fear that Crusty had gotten fired. Krusty's not fired, just taking a week out in Philly, but he'll be back. So just as a reminder, folks, make sure to hit that like and subscribe on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, however you watch or listen to us ramble on a weekly basis. Let's get into it. Guys, the draft is done. Today is July 1st. It's the first day of free agency. This will be coming out Wednesday, July 2nd. I'm going to throw it out a day early just because there's so much going on during this free agency, even though this free agency is kind of boring compared to others in terms of notable players going to new teams. We'll get to that in a minute, but there's still quite a few signings that have happened today and that will happen probably throughout this week. So we're just going to throw this recording out earlier than we do, just so we're not giving you guys just old information. Let's get into it. Speaking of all of the signings that have happened today, we have a lot of them. If I miss one, if I miss your favorite, I'm sorry. There were a lot of them, to be fair. So I think I got a decent amount of them. Before we get to free agency, we've got an update on our former Blackhawk legend, Joe Veleno. Was bought out by the Seattle Kraken. You guys will remember last week there was a one-on-one exchange between Chicago and Seattle for Joe Veleno and Andrei Burakovsky. Now Veleno is being bought out by the Kraken. Getting to free agency signings officially. Jonathan Toews is a Winnipeg Jet. It is July 1. We knew about this, but now it's official. Pen to paper, he is a Jet. Pen to paper, Jonathan Toews is back in the NHL, and that's what matters. You've got Giroux with a 1-year extension with the Ottawa Senators. You've got Dante Fabro with a 4-year contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets. The biggest, hottest rumor mill that kind of has been going on for a while. And then the trade was definitely, there were some rumors and rumblings with different things over draft weekend, but Mitch Marner is a Knight, as everybody, or as people have been posting, once a Knight, always a Knight, because he was a London Knight in juniors, and now he's a Vegas Golden Knight. You got a one-on-one trade with Mitch Marner to the Vegas Golden Knights and then Nick Watt to the Toronto Maple Leafs. There was a lot of drama. Marner was going to hit the free agency. There was suggestion of tampering on Vegas's end. Not really sure we'll get the entire situation of what happened or the truth of it, but Marner signed an extension and then was promptly traded, and the trade was between Toronto and Vegas. So Marner is a Vegas Golden Knight now. You got Evan Bouchard with a 4-year extension at $10.5 million to the Edmonton Oilers because, as I know and as Krusty knows, Stan Bowman really loves to just throw out a bunch of money. Bill Zito has done it again. We've got Ekblad, Bennett, and Marchand, all with decent to massive extensions. You've got the core 8 of that team locked up until at least 2030. Some guys are locked up till longer. Guys, whether we like it or not, the Florida Panthers are projected for a three-peat. I mean, I love it because then that means Tomo Rutu gets a 3rd Stanley Cup and I get to watch Seth Jones lift the cup again. So I'm okay with it. But I know the masses are not happy about the inevitability. but we'll also get to that in a minute. You've got Romanov with an 8-year extension to the New York Islanders. You've got Provorov with $8.5 million and a 7-year extension with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Andrei Kuzmenko, 1 year, $4.3 million with the Los Angeles Kings. You've got Thatcher Demko and Brock Besser both having pretty substantial extensions with the Vancouver Canucks. Guys, I still don't really know what the Vancouver Canucks are doing, because you signed Demko to a massive extension, and I'm a fan of Thatcher Demko. However, as we've talked about on the show quite a bit, Thatcher Demko is battling an injury, that there really isn't a recovery plan. The recovery is kind of just, he's got to play through it. And so to sign him to that large of an extension, I was surprised by it. You've got Corey Perry to the Los Angeles Kings. Showtime back in Detroit. There were rumors of him going elsewhere. I think the other big name was him going to New York, which I'm glad he isn't, and I'm surprised he would want to go back. Just because they weren't really nice to him the last time that he was there. But who knows? Maybe he just likes playing hockey in New York. It's hometown adjacent, because do you really want to go to the Sabres? Anyway, Patrick Kane, 1 year back in Detroit. Very much excited to see whichever game comes first, if it's in Detroit first or Winnipeg first, but the first Detroit-Winnipeg matchup. You've got Gavrikov with a nice signing to the New York Rangers. You've got Nate Schmidt of the Florida Panthers going to the Utah Mammoth. You've got Nick Bjugstad to the St. Louis Blues. You've got Alex Lyon to the Buffalo Sabres. And because I know a lot of people were sad that he wasn't getting a qualifying offer, I mean, we weren't surprised, just because management isn't the biggest fan of his, but he's got a new contract with some better weather and a fresh start, and we wish him well. Philip Kurashev with a 1-year contract to the San Jose Sharks. He is going to babysit all of the tiny tots coming into that organization. So good for him. Speaking of the NHL world, we had a question fielded to us prior to taping of, right now, off the bat, who do we see winning the Stanley Cup? It's Florida. I know that's not a real creative answer, but as of right now, there really isn't anything, one, that's leading me thinking that they can't run it back. And as of right now, there's nothing causing me to think that there's another team that could make a strong case at the moment. I am curious to see kind of, if Florida does go back to the Cup final, who is it against? Does Edmonton have the ability to go again? We don't know. But sorry, it's not a creative answer, but there really isn't anything. No, there's no real evidence in front of me that's making me believe that Florida won't or they can't run it back. So Florida for the three-peat, Ruutu for the three-peat, and Seth Jones for the back-to-back. Now, jumping back into this weekend, because we had the draft, and you listened to us talk a lot about these kiddos. I just wanted to go over kind of where you can find them next year and some kind of potential projections for these kids. So the list that I have right now is kids that they're either committed to a college or ones that I'm never 100% sure, but I can be 95% sure that they are not going to be in Rockford, and they either can't be in Rockford because they're still, they're through the CHL and they haven't aged out of juniors yet, and they're not going to make it to the big club, or they're just not going to be in Rockford next year. So you've got Jack Pridham with the Kitchener Rangers. He was on the Kitchener Rangers originally last year. Then he had committed to Boston University. Now he decommitted. and has decided to go back to the Kitchener Rangers. Krusty and I will probably discuss this later on of the like CHL versus NCAA. It's definitely the NCAA is definitely enticing a lot of Canadian kids to, not play in juniors and go the collegiate route. But also in reverse, college isn't for everybody. There's definitely quite a few kids where the CHL layout and everything works for them just fine. So that's probably the case for Jack Pridham. So he'll be back with the Kitchener Rangers, which is in the OHL. Sasha Boisvert is transferring. We talked about this a little bit when it was announced. Sasha Boisvert is transferring from the University of North Dakota to Boston University. There were rumors and rumblings of why the switch. But apparently it really came from when University of North Dakota's head coach got fired. Apparently him and Boisvert were very tight. He had recruited Boisvert when he was a kid. And so that kind of caused Sasha to look elsewhere and not be as loyal to University of North Dakota. So now he's going to be in Boston. Very, very excited with all of the other high profile prospects from other teams that are either going to be playing their first year in Boston University next year or they're going back for another year. I'm excited to see him play with other high caliber prospects. You've got Vaclav Nestrasil, who was drafted this past weekend with the 25th pick. He used to play for the Muskegon Lumberjacks, and now he is set to play at University of Massachusetts this upcoming year. Big fun. You've got John Mustard and Julius Sumpf going to Providence College. I think this is a good jump for Sumpf. He's 20, and to kind of go the next step, regardless of how he pans out within our system. I think it's a nice step to go from the Q League to college. I think, everything's going to be bigger and better. You've got Ty Henry going back to Erie Otters in the OHL. You've got Adam Guyon going for his sophomore year at University of Minnesota Duluth. You've got Nathan Bame at Kamloops Blazers. That's out in the WHL. You've got Patrick Holmes with the Brantford Bulldogs. Roman Kanserov, as far as I know, still has 1 year on his contract with his KHL team. And the big old question mark when it comes to other prospects is, what's Anton Frandell going to do? So there were talks of, is he going to go back to Sweden? Is he going to be in Rockford? Is he going to be in Chicago? As of right now, he still technically has 1 year left on his SHL contract, I believe. I think Kyle and that team are kind of like in negotiations and talks of, could they get him out of it, sort of thing. But I know on a personal standpoint, he actually said it on draft weekend, I'm going to do everything that I can to make this team, being Chicago, come October. But if I don't make it, I'm going back to Sweden. Krusty and I talked about this a little bit. I think this makes perfect sense. It's a big, scary jump to go to a new country and to go from leaving home to kind of playing in the middle of nowhere where maybe, especially if your English isn't the best, it's just a lot harder on you mentally, emotionally, and everything. So it definitely makes sense. And also, we're not in a rush. If he makes the team, okay, that's a different situation entirely. But if he doesn't make the team, we don't need to freak out that he's going back to Sweden. This is okay. And, like we said last weekend, he does play at the Swedish professional level. So he's playing against grown men. It's not like there's a big difference between him going back to the SHL and somebody else going back to the CHL when you're playing with a bunch of kids. There's a different maturity level, so he's still going to be developed over in Sweden. There are other prospects, but a lot of them are kind of like in a bigger question mark whether they make the Chicago roster come October whether they go back to juniors, whether they go to Rockford. It's a lot of we don't know. Krusty and I will definitely kind of break down on an individual basis once we get closer to, like training camp in the beginning of the season, once we have a better idea of kind of who are the guys that we're going to be watching this year, either Chicago or Rockford. But speaking of that, also brings us to what we did today. And what we did today, well, what Kyle did today, because I really didn't do anything aside from just refresh my Twitter feed and watch a lot of people go a lot of different places. But it was definitely quiet for free agency day for the Blackhawks. We didn't even acquire a free agent. We just made we acquired Donantino, who I believe is going to be an AHL acquiree, was formerly with the Manitoba Moose. So that's Winnipeg's AHL affiliate. So I'm assuming it is a Rockford spot. But at the NHL level, we only made one trade today. Sam Lafferty is back. I think we have found Stan Bowman's Brandon Saad / Jeremy Morin for Kyle Davidson. It is Sam Lafferty. So that's the only trade that we did. And we haven't done any free agency yet. Whether we acquire any more going into the week, who knows? Not me. But it's definitely led a lot of people either angry or I guess folks that are drinking the Kool-Aid juice really aren't that angry. And I'm kind of in between. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid juice, but I'm not also, but it makes sense. And also, guys, this is what Kyle's been saying for the past couple of weeks. So I don't really think that it should come as a surprise when he was saying that we're not going to go out and get guys. And then we didn't go out and go get guys. I think it's going to continue to be a quiet free agency. This free agent year was definitely light in terms of realistic signings that Chicago could do. I know there were definitely some like top guys. We have your Besser, your Marner, your Ehlers, who still has not signed with anybody, but I'm banking on he's going to be a Capital when I wake up tomorrow morning. This was definitely a lighter year in terms of realistic guys we could get that are going to make a difference. Could we do exactly what we did last year and load up on a ton of bottom six guys just so the kids don't have to immediately play every minute of 82 games? Sure, but look how well that worked out last year. I mean, they were even commenting on it during draft weekend of, well, what Chicago did last year really didn't seem to work. So I think Kyle knows that, on top of we have a lot of kids coming up and we still have a lot of those signings from last year that are still, whether or not they're good, they're still taking up spots in the roster that either could be a kid or that, magical fix it piece. You still have Bert, you still have Tavo, you still have Laurent Brassat still technically on the roster. So I think all of those things kind of combined, this really wasn't the year to go out and make a big splash in free agency. I also don't think, in my opinion, that free agency is the way that you're going to get somebody that makes a big difference. I think it's more along the trade route, but we'll get to that in a second. But with free agency, like I said, there's a lot of people that are upset that Kyle didn't do anything. And while I don't necessarily agree that what Kyle did was wrong, I definitely can understand where their frustration comes from. There's somebody made a point about this earlier, but there's definitely been some Chicago sport media outlets that have been definitely heavy pumping we got to get this guy, we got to get this guy. Oh, this guy is going to fix us. And then when we don't, you're like, well, wait, I've just listened to all of these people tell me all season that we're definitely going to go out and get this guy, that we need this guy. And then we don't. I understand the frustration. I didn't think that it was necessarily realistic, but I definitely understand the frustration of, being told something by various different media outlets of, well, that we got to do this, we need to do this, and then when that doesn't happen, you're like, what the hell? Um, yeah. So that's my thought with free agency. Uh, Kyle did speak with the media today because we do have our off ice development camp. So he spoke after some of the kiddos did. They asked him some questions about the future contract extensions because we've got a lot of guys going into being an RFA at the end of this next season. The biggest issue for me with when Kyle was talking about the future is that, he said that he wants us to make the next step. That's what he said at the beginning of last year. Like, we're done being at rock bottom. But there really hasn't been anything that has proved that to me in terms of his actions. Um, you know, I'm everything that he's done has kind of just been like the easy thing to do in this situation. And there hasn't really been a hard choice or decision that's made me realize, oh, they're serious about being competitive. They're serious about, not being a top 3 lottery team. Um, you look at the Florida trade. That was easy. You look at the Hagel trade. That was easy. You look at burning everything to the ground for Core and Nazar. That was easy. You look at, letting Strom walk away for nothing. That was easy. Um, there really hasn't been anything that has made, like I said, that has made me think that, oh, he's made a hard decision and he's made a choice, and whether it backfires or not, beside the point. Um, it's just been kind of easy choices. Uh, and when he spoke to the media today, he wasn't even really that specific. They had asked him about how does he feel going into the next year of this, the 4th year of the rebuild, and kind of just spoke on, the main point now is like having more of these kids come up, but nothing about being competitive or getting out of this rebuild, which I found mildly concerning. With that being said, uh, let's get into kind of who are these kiddos and what we think next year is gonna look like. Because he said that, it's about a lot of these kids getting more time and being able to kind of be up for longer and play more minutes and just play more, which I'm for, because if I'm going to watch this dumpster fire, I'd rather watch and support a 20-year-old doing his best versus a veteran that really has no heart in the game. So, based on kind of the roster that we have at hand, I think forward wise, you're looking at about 2 spots open if you don't trade people who I think we should trade. So if you do no trades, you've got about 2 spots open because you've got the Mickey Mouse, you've got Bedard, you've got Tavo, Donato, NASCAR, Reichel, Slaggert, Foligno, you've got Lafferty back, you got Burakovsky. So that puts you at about 2 potential spots open. And you're between Oliver Moore, Ryan Green, Colton Dock, and my boy Sam Savoie. Now, regarding the Sam Lafferty acquiring, my initial thought was, oh my God, I can't wait to see Savoie and Lafferty on the same line. I'm going to be so bummed if this Lafferty acquisition is the reason why Savoie isn't called up and doesn't have a roster spot come October. Because if I have to watch this craziness of potentially another wasted year, I at least want to watch my favorite prospect get some NHL minutes. I mean, come on, he's overdue for it. But anyway, so you've got 4 guys with 2 roster spots potentially. For defensive, it's a lot more up in the air. The ones that I think are sure in are Vlasic, Rinzel, Kaiser, and Murphy. You've got about 3 spots open, 2 to 3 potentially, and you're between Nolan Allen, Ethan DeMastro, Core, and Artie. Now, I am a believer. I know a lot of people want to see Artie up. I think Artie needs to go to Rockford, which leaves you with Core, EDM, and Allen. In my opinion, I think it should be Core and EDM. I do like Allen's game. However, I think EDM and Allen play a similar game, and I think EDM fits more into their future. So maybe you balance and kind of be able to showcase Allen a bit for trade potential. Who knows? But we'll see. And then forward wise, like I said, we have 2 spots open. You're between Moore, Green, Doc, and Savvy. I think it should be Doc and Savvy, or Savvy and Green. I think Oliver needs time in Rockford, and to be honest, I think Green also needs time in Rockford. Gosh darn it, I just want to see Sam Savoie up at the NHL level. Sue me. But that's for next year. Like I said, we have a ton of guys going into their UFA and RFA at the end of next season. For UFAs, you have Nick Foligno, Dickinson, Mikheyev, Lafferty, Murphy, Brissett, and Joey Anderson. I don't think any of them come back the end of next year. I think they're all kind of gone, because at that point you're really wanting to showcase all the kids, and at that point the kids who have been up for a decent period compared to others should really be comfortable, at least sort of in their position. And then RFA next year, you've got Spencer Knight, Korchinski, Allen, Bedard, NASCAR, Doc, Reichel, Kuzman, Mast, EDM, and Drew. Now, a couple of those guys are going to be just down at their Rockford pieces. Some of them aren't going to make it. And then some of them, obviously, they will re-sign. They'll probably re-sign Bedard, NASCAR, Spencer. If I was Kyle, I'd re-sign Drew as soon as possible. And then some will probably get dragged out a bit more. But like I said, that's why I think this free agency has been a bit quiet. There really just aren't a ton of spots that we have places for. I mean, to be honest, like, we could fill an entire roster with the kids. And we really, what we need is top 6 forward talent, and we weren't going to get it in free agency. And so I understand Kyle's opinion and what he's doing, where he's just rather not get anything than get too much, because you got too much last year and it didn't work all that great. So I understand taking the more cautious approach in terms of free agencies. Now, when it comes to trades, I'd be absolutely ruthless. There's a handful of players that in my mind would easily be on the trade block if I was able to get something for them. If that magical Jason Robertson trade is still in the picture, I definitely see what pieces that I could trade for. But in terms of free agency, I just don't think that's necessarily the route to get what you need. So, jumping to, because we've talked a lot about free agency and signings and things, and it's been a lot for today. We're going to jump to Blackhawk lore. Because, like I said, guys, this week we're doing our off ice development camp. But once upon a time ago, it used to be on ice, like every other team does. And it was great. So, Blackhawk lore is on ice development camp. And, guys, this used to be at Fifth Third. And before that, it was at another rink, I believe Johnny's Ice House, or a different rink in the city. And then before that, Krusty would drive me down to Bensonville, and that was great. That was kind of dark ages, the very, very beginning of the rebuild, because I remember one of the final years of it being in Bensonville. I think McDonough was there saying hi to everybody. But the on ice development camp, guys, it was great. You would get fans, it would be for the entire week, kind of similar to training camp, where it would be half and half, like group one and then group two. They would do scrimmages, they would do weird drills, and it was just fun to watch. It would be the whole week. You would get some people that would just come for the day. You would get some people like Krusty and I, because I was a kid at this point and I didn't have a job, that would just be parked out there the entire week. A lot of the times you had the family, because these were still, I mean, they were kids. So their family would be out there. We've ran into, I remember when I was like in high school, like Anthony Lewis's whole family took up like half of the rows for on ice development camp. Krusty and I, we had a really nice conversation with the Goose's dad when he was new. That was probably the best on ice development camp. I just get a picture from Krusty with a blonde guy in a Patrick Kane t-shirt. And I was like, this obviously is my new favorite. And it was Gustav Forsling. We've had nice conversations with like this Dylan Sakura's parents. It was just really nice. You got to like talk to the family. All the coaches were there, and it was very just casual in terms of like folks that were up in the bleachers. And like I said, you would get to know like some of the fans that would come like either every day, or maybe you saw them a couple of times. There was definitely, I would definitely make friends with as many people, because as Krusty and I have said on multiple occasions, we love making hockey friends. But especially when I was younger, because I would say it's getting better now, but like 10 years ago, it was definitely a little bit harder, and it was definitely a little bit lonelier to be a female hockey fan. It's still kind of, it's not all sunshine and roses now, but it was definitely a lot lonelier. And so there was always like a group of other girls that would be there. It was just like nice to talk hockey with other people. So it was a really just nice thing. It was also just cool to see other kids kind of scrimmage with each other that you wouldn't see in like training camp or preseason. Like you were able to see college kids on the ice with Canadian prospects. Like it was just a kind of mesh of everybody. And you were able to and the reason why Krusty and I like going, or I like going to like junior games, is you were able to just pick a guy at development camp and just watch him progress. That was me with Forsling and Hagel, and it was just really cool to just see, this kid one day of development camp and 5 years later, like how far that they've grown. It was awesome. So it definitely was a favorite of mine. But now it's off ice, which is kind of a bummer, because at the beginning of July, I'm also definitely very, very itchy to just watch some hockey, even if it's just drills. So it was definitely a nice thing to kind of hold us over until training camp. But now it's off ice, and it's a little sad because I could go for some hockey right about now. But that is our lore of the week, which is the now off ice, but formerly on ice development camp. And like I said, guys, this was going to be a shorter one just because we don't have Krusty. We don't have detours. We don't have roadblocks with our discussions this week. So that is all. Just as a reminder, folks, make sure to hit that like and subscribe on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, however you watch or listen to us ramble on a weekly basis. That is all. We will be back at it next week. And like I said, Krusty will be back. We'll be back to our normal hour-long sessions next week.